"We just don't have the space for your mother." I heard that sentence for years. Every Christmas, every New Year's, every Thanksgiving. Always the same excuse delivered smoothly from Diane's lips. "My daughter-in-law. There's just no room for you, Eleanor. The house is packed. You know how it is." But there was always space for her mother, for her father, for her Aunt Clarice, for the 2 dogs that never stopped barking, for everyone but me. My name is Eleanor Davenport, and I am 69 years old. I've been a mother for 35 years, a grandmother for 23, and invisible for almost a decade. I don't know the exact moment my own son stopped caring, but I do remember the day I finally accepted it. It was December 24th. That was just 11 months ago. I was sitting in my living room with the dining table set for 6. I'd cooked for 2 full days. The herb-roasted turkey that Marcus had loved since he was a boy, buttery mashed potatoes, apple walnut salad, and fresh homemade bread that was still warm. I'd bought the good Cabernet Sauvignon that Diane liked even though it cost $40 a bottle. I expected them at 600s. At 6:30, I sent Marcus a text. At 7, I called. At 7:30, I called again. Nothing. Silence. The turkey was cooling. The candles had burned down halfway. At 8:15, I opened my phone and went onto that app the young folks used to post pictures. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I had a premonition. Maybe I already knew deep down and just needed the confirmation. And there it was. The proof that it wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a late arrival. And it wasn't that they were just too busy. The photo showed my entire family gathered at Diane's parents' house. Marcus was grinning, wearing a ridiculous Christmas hat. My 2 grandchildren, Andre and Taylor, were in matching new holiday pajamas. Diane was hugging her mother. Her father was pouring wine. Aunt Clarice was cutting an enormous pie. And the dogs had red ribbons around their necks. The caption read, "Our first Christmas in the new house. Family complete. Blessed. Family complete." I put the phone down on the table. I didn't cry. That was the strangest part. I had imagined this moment so many times, and I always thought that if it happened I would break down, that I would scream, call them furiously, and demand an explanation. But I didn't do any of that. I just sat there looking at the cold turkey, the empty wine glasses, the unused plates. I stared at the chair where Marcus should have been, and the chair where my grandson should have been asking about my gingerbread cookies. I blew out the candles, covered the food, and put away the gifts I'd wrapped with such care. 3 weeks of my retirement check invested in toys for Andre, a velvet dress for Taylor, and an expensive shirt for Marcus. That night I went to bed early. I put on some soft music and just lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling something inside me crack very slowly, like when glass is stressed but hasn't completely shattered yet. The next day Marcus called. "Mom, I'm so sorry. We just ran late and decided to stay at Diane's parents' place. You know how it is with the kids. They were exhausted from the drive. Next time, I promise." His voice sounded calm, natural, as if he truly believed his own lie, as if I hadn't seen the picture, as if I didn't know they never had any intention of coming to my house. "It's okay, son. Don't worry about it." That was all I said, because at that moment I still didn't understand. I still thought maybe it had been a last-minute decision, that perhaps Diane had convinced him that maybe next year would be different. But it wasn't different. It never was. The months passed, and every celebration was the same story. In January, for Andre's birthday, there was no invitation. Marcus told me it would be something small, just the 4 of them. Later I saw the photos. 20 people in a banquet hall, a clown, a 3-tier cake, balloons everywhere. In March, when I turned 69, I received a text message. "Happy birthday, Mom. We love you so much." That was it. Not a call, not a visit, not even a card. In April, it was Taylor's first communion. I found out through the photos a beautiful white dress, all of Diane's family present. I hadn't even known they were planning the ceremony. In July, Marcus turned 40. Diane organized a surprise dinner. 40 guests, flowers, elegant decor, a live band. I found out 3 days later when a neighbor asked if I had enjoyed my son's party. I hadn't been at that party. September Labor Day weekend. They told me they were going out of town. I saw them in the park near my house having a picnic with all of Diane's family. October Halloween. The children walked right past my street trick-or-treating. I had bought special candy thinking maybe Marcus would bring them by. They passed my house without knocking. Then came November Thanksgiving. This time they didn't even bother with an excuse. They just didn't answer my messages. 3 days later, Marcus showed up at my door as if nothing had happened. Mom, I was thinking, how about we do something different for Christmas this year? Diane and I want to take a special trip with the kids. Maybe to the mountains somewhere with snow. I really looked at him. I saw my son. I saw the child I'd raised alone after his father abandoned us. The boy I'd fed with my own hard-earned money, whose college I'd paid for by working double shifts, and whom I defended from everyone. And I saw a stranger. That sounds lovely. Son, do you have a place already? No, we're still looking, but we want something special. The kids have never seen snow. I know a place. A resort up in the Rockies. Private cabins, gourmet restaurant, a spa, activities for kids. The view is incredible. Marcus lit up immediately. Really, what's it called? I showed him the brochure I'd kept for years. A place I'd always wanted to visit but could never afford. Wow, Mom. It looks perfect, but it's very expensive. I'm inviting the whole family. 5 days, the entire Christmas week. It's my gift. I watched his eyes gleam. I saw him pull out his phone and send photos to Diane. I watched her reply with heart emojis and exclamation points. Mom, this is incredible. Diane is thrilled. The kids are going to freak out. When do we book? It's already booked. We leave on December 22nd. I've paid for everything in advance. Cabins, meals, activities, all inclusive. Thank you, Mom. Seriously, this is going to be the best Christmas of our lives. He hugged me. I felt his arms around me, and I felt nothing. No love, no resentment, no sadness, just emptiness. After he left, I sat in my living room, the same room where I'd spent the previous Christmas, completely alone. I pulled out a folder I'd been filling for months. Documents, photographs, saved messages, recorded conversations, invoices, receipts. Every piece of evidence carefully organized. Every proof of something I still didn't fully grasp, but knew was real. Because 3 months earlier in August, someone had knocked on my door. A man I didn't know. A man with a manila envelope and a story that changed everything. Julian Davis, private investigator. The business card he handed me was simple, no frills. He was around 60, with silver hair and alert eyes that missed nothing. Mrs. Davenport, I need to speak with you about a matter of significant financial importance. I'd invited him in, offered him tea, and listened as he explained why he was there. He'd been hired by a law firm in Denver, Sullivan and Graves to locate me. Apparently, Raymond Sullivan, a distant cousin of my late husband, had passed away 7 years ago, leaving behind a substantial estate. With no children or immediate family, Raymond had designated surviving members of the Sullivan family as his beneficiaries. As the widow of James Sullivan, I was legally entitled to a portion of that inheritance. But here's the thing, Mrs. Davenport. When we traced the disbursement of funds, we discovered that the entire inheritance was claimed and received by your son Marcus Davenport, acting as the family's legal representative. According to our records, he never disclosed this inheritance to you. The total amount he received on behalf of the Sullivan family was $850,000, of which you were entitled to at least half. I remember how the teacup trembled in my hands. $425,000. A sum that could have changed my retirement completely. Money that would have allowed me to travel, to move to a better neighborhood, to not worry about counting pennies at the grocery store. Money that was rightfully mine. But how could Marcus? I couldn't finish the sentence. It seemed impossible, unthinkable that my own son would steal from me. Julian Davis placed several documents on my coffee table. Bank transfers, property records, business investments. All showing where my money had gone. The new house that Marcus and Diane had purchased 3 years ago, a down payment of $200,000. The expansion of Diane's boutique interior design business 2 years ago, an investment of $150,000. And the rest luxury vacations, private school tuition for the children, a new SUV, designer furniture. My money, my inheritance, my security, all taken without my knowledge or consent. I've been hired to gather evidence for potential legal action, Julian explained. The law firm believes you have a strong case for recovery of assets plus interest, possibly even punitive damages given the deliberate nature of the deception. But why come forward now? After 7 years, Julian shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. The truth is, Mrs. Davenport, the firm has been trying to locate you for some time. Your son provided incorrect contact information saying you had moved to Arizona. It was only when one of the junior partners happened to see your name in a local community newsletter that they realized you were still in the same town. They immediately hired me to investigate. The pieces started falling into place. The sudden distance, the excuses, the way Marcus and Diane had gradually pushed me out of their lives. It wasn't just thoughtlessness or busy schedules. It was deliberate. They were afraid I would find out about the money. I looked at the Christmas card sitting on my mantel, the one Marcus had sent last year with a photo of them all in front of their beautiful new house. The house bought with my money. Julian Davis was watching me closely. "What would you like to do, Mrs. Davenport? The firm is prepared to represent you in recovering your assets. But I should warn you, legal battles like this can be lengthy and emotionally draining, especially when family is involved." I thought about it for a long moment. The anger I should have felt was strangely absent, replaced by a cold, clear determination I'd never experienced before. "Give me some time, Mr. Davis. I need to think." After he left, I sat in my garden until sunset, watching the bees move from flower to flower, methodical and purposeful. I thought about the life I'd lived. 30 years as a high school English teacher before retirement, raising Marcus alone after James left when our son was 8, working summer jobs and evening shifts to put Marcus through college. The pride I'd felt when he graduated with honors, when he got his first corporate job, when he married Diane in that beautiful ceremony where he'd thanked me publicly for all my sacrifices. What had happened to that son? When had gratitude turned to greed? When had love transformed into something so calculated? I called Julian Davis the next morning. "I don't want to sue my son. Not yet. First, I want to understand why. I want to gather my own evidence. And then I want to confront him face to face." That's when I started building my folder. I documented every exclusion, every lie, every excuse. I checked property records, business filings, anything I could access publicly. I hired Julian to obtain financial records that required more expertise. Month by month, I constructed a complete picture of the betrayal. The pieces came together like a disturbing puzzle. Not only had Marcus stolen my inheritance, but he and Diane had systematically removed me from their lives to avoid any chance I might discover the truth. What if someone mentioned the money? What if I asked questions about their sudden prosperity? Better to keep me at a distance, to make me invisible. The most painful discovery came in October when Julian found evidence that Diane was having an affair with Jerome Wells, a married real estate investor who had helped her expand her business using my stolen money. Marcus was oblivious too, caught up in his own deception to see his wife's. It was like watching a Greek tragedy unfold, all built on the foundation of that original sin, the theft of my inheritance. And now, as I sat in my living room after Marcus had left, excited about the Christmas mountain resort I'd promised to pay for, I felt strangely calm. The trap was set. All the players would be in place. Marcus, Diane, even Diane's parents who had benefited from my money without knowing it, and Jerome Wells, whom Diane didn't know I knew about. Julian and I had planned everything carefully. He would be there staying in a cabin nearby with all the documentation we'd gathered. I had hired a lawyer, Sarah Chen, who specialized in estate fraud. She would also be present ready with the legal paperwork. The confrontation would happen on the third night of our stay, after everyone had settled in, after they had enjoyed the luxury their stolen money had previously afforded them, but that I was now providing. I wanted them to feel secure, comfortable, unsuspecting. And then I would reveal everything. Was I nervous? Oddly, no. Was I sad beyond words? But I was also determined. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about my dignity. About not allowing myself to be erased from my own family. About standing up and saying I am here. I matter. You cannot make me disappear. The weeks leading up to Christmas passed quickly. I packed carefully, choosing clothes that made me feel confident. I reviewed all the documents one last time with Julian and Sarah. We rehearsed what would happen, what I would say, how I would respond to denials or excuses. December 22nd arrived bright and clear. Marcus picked me up in his luxury SUV, the one purchased with my money. Diane was polite but distant in the front seat, occasionally checking her phone. The children, Andre and Taylor, were excited about the trip, but barely acknowledged my presence beyond quick hello hugs. I sat in the back watching the scenery change as we drove into the mountains. The snow-covered peaks grew larger, the air crisper. 3 hours into the journey, Taylor turned to me suddenly. "Grandma, why don't you ever come to our house?" The car went silent. I could see Marcus's knuckles whiten on the steering wheel. Diane quickly intervened. "Taylor, Grandma is very busy with her friends and activities. Plus, she lives far away." "I live 20 minutes from your house," I corrected gently. And I'm not busy at all. I'd love to visit more often. Diane's laugh was brittle. Well, you know how it is. Our schedules are just crazy these days. I caught Taylor's eye in the rearview mirror. Maybe after this trip you can come visit me. I make the best hot chocolate in the world, with homemade marshmallows. Taylor's face lit up, but Diane quickly changed the subject, pointing out a herd of deer by the roadside. The moment passed, but I saw Marcus glance at me in the mirror, a flicker of something like guilt in his eyes. The resort was everything the brochure had promised. Cedar cabins nestled among pine trees, a main lodge with soaring ceilings, and a massive stone fireplace, the scent of wood smoke and mulled wine in the air. The children gasped when they saw it all running ahead to explore while Diane took photos for her social media. We checked in and I watched the receptionist's eyebrows rise when she processed my credit card for the entire stay. $6,000. The most money I'd ever spent at once in my life. But it would be worth it. Our cabins were adjacent. Mine was smaller just for me, while Marcus and his family had a larger one with 2 bedrooms. Diane's parents would arrive the next day and stay in a third cabin nearby. I had arranged for Jerome Wells to arrive on the 3rd day, supposedly as a surprise business associate of Diane's. He believed he was being invited for a romantic rendezvous while Marcus was busy with family activities. He had no idea what was actually planned. That first evening we gathered in the lodge for dinner. The restaurant was elegant. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, a pianist playing Christmas carols softly in the corner. I watched as Diane ordered the most expensive wine on the menu without even a glance at the price. I saw Marcus insist the children could have whatever they wanted, even as they chose lobster tails and prime rib. I observed the easy way they inhabited this luxury as if it was their natural environment. I ate little answering questions when asked, but mostly observing. How Diane checked her phone constantly under the table. How Marcus boasted about his recent promotion. How the children spoke of their private school and expensive hobbies without any awareness of privilege. After dinner back in my cabin, I called Julian to confirm he had arrived and was staying at the small inn down the road. Everything was in place. Sarah Chen would arrive tomorrow afternoon. The documents were ready, the strategy set. I slept surprisingly well that night, better than I had in months. Perhaps it was the mountain air, or perhaps it was the knowledge that soon, very soon, the truth would be revealed. The next day brought fresh snow and the arrival of Diane's parents, Robert and Catherine Miller. They were pleasant people who had always been polite to me at family gatherings, but never particularly warm. They didn't know about my inheritance either. In their minds, Marcus and Diane's success was entirely self-made. We spent the day enjoying the resort amenities. The children had skiing lessons while the adults visited the spa. I had deliberately booked treatments for everyone. Massages, facials, the works. I wanted them relaxed, content, unsuspecting. That evening, we all gathered in Marcus and Diane's cabin for drinks before dinner. Catherine was effusive about how wonderful it was for me to treat everyone to such luxury. It's so generous, Eleanor, especially on a teacher's pension. I never would have expected. I smiled. I've been saving for years for a special family trip. And what better time than Christmas? Marcus raised his glass. To Mom for making this amazing vacation possible. They all toasted, and I nodded graciously, sipping my wine slowly. 24 more hours. Just 24 more hours, and everything would change. Later that night, I met briefly with Julian and Sarah in my cabin. We reviewed everything one final time. The documents were arranged chronologically. The inheritance papers, the bank transfers, the property records, the business investments. Then the evidence of the deliberate exclusion. The text messages, the social media posts, the recorded conversations. And finally, the evidence of Diane's affair with Jerome Wells. Photographs, hotel receipts, text messages that Julian had legally obtained. It's quite a case, Sarah said quietly. I've seen family financial disputes before, but rarely with this level of deliberate deception. You're entitled to the full amount plus interest, Mrs. Davenport. And given the circumstances, punitive damages are likely. I don't want to punish them, I replied. I just want the truth acknowledged. I want my place in this family recognized. And yes, I want my money back. Julian nodded. You're being very reasonable, Eleanor. More reasonable than most would be in your position. I looked out the window at the falling snow. Reasonable isn't the word I'd use. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just resolute. The 3rd day dawned bright and cold. Fresh powder snow covered everything, transforming the resort into a winter wonderland. The children were ecstatic, building snowmen and having snowball fights. I watched from the porch of my cabin, sipping hot chocolate, observing the family tableau. They looked so perfect from a distance. The handsome father showing his son how to pack snow properly, the stylish mother adjusting her daughter's hat, the doting grandparents taking photos. A Christmas card come to life. Only I knew what lay beneath the surface. The theft, the lies, the infidelity, the deliberate erasure of a grandmother. Around noon, I received a text from Julian. Wells has arrived. He's checked into the lodge. I responded, Diane knows yes. She met him briefly in the lobby, told him to wait until this evening when she can slip away. Everything was falling into place. I spent the afternoon in my cabin going over what I would say one final time. I chose my outfit carefully, a deep blue sweater that Marcus had given me years ago before all this began. I wanted the visual reminder of better times. At 6:00 p.m. I texted Marcus. Could everyone come to my cabin at 7:00? I've arranged a special dinner for us here. A private chef. He replied immediately. Sounds great, Mom. We'll be there. I texted Diane separately. I've invited a special guest to join us. Someone you know. Please don't mention it to Marcus yet. I want it to be a surprise. Her response came quickly, confusion evident. A guest who just trusts me, I wrote back. I think you'll be pleased. Then I texted Jerome Wells using the number Julian had provided. Diane suggested you join us for a private dinner in cabin 12 at 7:00. She says Marcus will be tied up with the children afterwards, so you'll have time together. I can't wait, he responded. The table was set for 8. The private chef I'd hired was preparing a gourmet meal in the small kitchen. Julian and Sarah waited in the bedroom ready to emerge when called. I had arranged the documents on the coffee table covered with a festive cloth. Everything was ready. At exactly 7:00, there was a knock at the door. Marcus, Diane, the children, and Diane's parents stood outside, the adults dressed for dinner, the children in nice but comfortable clothes. Welcome, I smiled, gesturing them inside. Please make yourselves comfortable. Dinner will be ready soon. They entered, exclaiming over the beautiful table setting, the delicious aromas from the kitchen, the soft Christmas music playing in the background. Diane kept glancing at the door, clearly wondering about the special guest I'd mentioned. At 7:15, Jerome Wells arrived. He was handsome in a polished way, expensive haircut, designer suit, confident smile. That smile faltered when he saw the entire family present. Jerome Marcus's voice was confused. What are you doing here? Diane had gone pale, her eyes darting between her husband and her lover. I don't understand. I invited him, I said calmly. Please, Jerome, join us. There's a place for you at the table. The confusion in the room was palpable. Robert and Catherine were looking between Diane and Jerome with growing suspicion. Marcus was frowning, trying to make sense of the situation. The children, sensing the tension, had gone quiet. Before anyone could speak further, I gestured to the chef. Could you give us a few minutes? We need to have a family discussion before dinner. The chef nodded and discreetly retreated to the kitchen, closing the door behind him. I moved to the coffee table and removed the festive cloth, revealing the stacks of documents beneath. It's time we all had an honest conversation, I said. About money, about family, about betrayal. Mom, what is this about? Marcus's voice had an edge of panic. I picked up the first document, the inheritance notification from 7 years ago. Do you recognize this? Marcus? His face drained of color. He glanced at Diane, who looked equally stricken. I continued, my voice steady. 7 years ago, Raymond Sullivan, your father's cousin, passed away. He left an estate worth $850,000 to surviving members of the Sullivan family. As James Sullivan's widow, I was entitled to half of that inheritance, but I never received a penny. Why is that, Marcus? Eleanor, I don't think this is the time or place. Robert began, but I held up my hand. With respect, Robert, this is exactly the time and place. Your daughter and son-in-law have built their lifestyle on stolen money. My stolen money. I gestured, and Julian and Sarah emerged from the bedroom. I'd like to introduce Julian Davis, private investigator, and Sarah Chen, attorney specializing in estate fraud. They've been helping me piece together what happened to my inheritance. The shock in the room was electric. Diane grabbed for her water glass, nearly knocking it over. Marcus stood up, his fists clenched. Mom, you've got it all wrong. I laid out document after document. The bank transfers showing Marcus receiving the entire inheritance. The property records for their new house purchased with a suspicious $200,000 down payment exactly 1 month after the inheritance was received. The business investment in Diane's boutique. The luxury purchases, the vacations. With each piece of evidence, Marcus seemed to shrink, his denials growing weaker. No one spoke. Even the children were watching with wide, confused eyes. Then I turned to the second stack of documents. These explain why I was gradually excluded from your lives. You needed to keep me at a distance to ensure I wouldn't discover the theft. No family gatherings where someone might mention the Sullivan money. No casual visits where I might notice your unexplained prosperity. No relationship with my grandchildren who might innocently reveal something. I looked directly at Marcus. When did you decide I was disposable, son? When did my role as your mother become less important than the money you stole from me? His face crumpled. Mom, it wasn't like that. I was going to tell you. I was going to pay you back. But then we bought the house, and Diane's business needed capital, and the kids' school. And Diane's affair needed financing too, I said quietly, turning to the final stack of documents. Diane gasped. What are you talking about? I pushed the photographs across the table. Diane and Jerome entering a hotel. Receipts for jewelry Jerome had purchased for her. Text messages between them discussing their relationship and critically how they were using my money to expand her business for their mutual benefit. Marcus stared at the evidence, his expression shifting from shock to betrayal to rage. He turned to Jerome, who was already backing toward the door. You son of a bitch! You knew about the money. You knew it was stolen. Jerome raised his hands defensively. Diane told me it was family money. That's all I knew, liar, Diane shouted. You knew everything. You helped me plan how to use it. Robert and Catherine were on their feet now. Catherine had put her arms around the children, trying to shield them from the unfolding chaos. Robert's face was thunderous. Diane, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you haven't been... It doesn't matter what she tells you. I interrupted, my voice cutting through the noise. What matters is the truth. And the truth is documented right here. The room fell silent. 6 faces stared at me, a mixture of shock, shame, anger, and confusion. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. It was as if we were all suspended in amber, frozen in this terrible moment of revelation. Then Taylor began to cry. Soft, confused sobs that broke the silence like a stone through ice. Andre put his arm around his sister protectively, looking at the adults with an expression far too old for his young face. That sound, my granddaughter's tears, pierced through me in a way none of the betrayal had. This wasn't what I wanted. The children were innocent in all of this. I moved to Taylor, kneeling beside her chair. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I didn't mean to upset you. This is grown-up business that has nothing to do with you. You and Andre are the most important people in this room, and nothing will change how much everyone loves you. But why is everyone fighting? Her small voice was choked with tears. Why did you say Dad stole money? Why did you say Mom was with Mr. Wells? I looked up at Marcus, at Diane, at the ruins of the family they had built on lies. They needed to answer this. They needed to take responsibility not just to me, but to their children. Marcus knelt on Taylor's other side. He was crying too, now silent tears tracking down his face. I made a terrible mistake, Taylor. Grandma's right. I took money that belonged to her. I thought I was doing the right thing for our family, but I was wrong. So wrong. Diane remained frozen, looking between Jerome, who was now standing by the door, and her parents, whose faces reflected their devastation. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. I can't do this. I can't explain this. She grabbed her coat and pushed past Jerome, yanking open the door and disappearing into the snowy night. Jerome hesitated for just a moment before following her. The room fell silent again, broken only by Taylor's quieter sobs and the soft murmuring of Catherine as she tried to comfort her grandchildren. Marcus stood slowly, looking older than I'd ever seen him. What happens now? His voice was barely a whisper. I nodded to Sarah, who stepped forward with a folder. We've prepared a settlement agreement. You will sell the house and business, repay the $425,000 plus 7 years of interest, and make a formal acknowledgement of what you've done. In return, I won't press criminal charges. Marcus took the folder with trembling hands. And the children. My voice softened. They're my grandchildren, Marcus. I love them. I've always loved them, even when you kept them from me. Nothing changes that. But from now on, I will be a real part of their lives. Not an afterthought. Not someone to be hidden away. A real grandmother who attends school events and celebrates birthdays and is never ever made to feel invisible again. Robert cleared his throat. Catherine and I will take the children back to our cabin now. They shouldn't be part of... the rest of this conversation. I agreed. The children had seen enough. They hugged their father briefly, then followed their other grandparents out into the night, leaving Marcus and me alone with Julian and Sarah. The room felt cavernous now, the beautiful dinner settings a mockery of the family gathering I had imagined. The chef peeked out from the kitchen, and I gestured for him to leave. There would be no dinner tonight. Julian and Sarah excused themselves as well, promising to return in the morning to finalize the agreement, leaving me alone with my son. Marcus sat heavily on the sofa, the settlement agreement clutched in his hands. He looked like a man who had lost everything, which in many ways he had.
"I thought I was protecting you,"
he said finally, his voice hollow. "I told myself you wouldn't know how to handle that much money, that you'd be taken advantage of, that it was safer if I managed it. But that wasn't your decision to make. It was my money, my right, my choice. I know that now." He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "And I know I knew it then, too. But I lied to myself. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that eventually I'd tell you, that eventually I'd make it right. But instead you pushed me further away. You made me invisible." He covered his face with his hands. "I was scared. Scared that someone would mention the money. Scared you would ask questions. Scared you would find out the truth. So I started distancing myself, inventing excuses. And Diane went along with it because she was also afraid of losing everything we had built with your money." "Everything you built was with my money," I corrected gently. "Yes, everything. And now it's all falling apart. The business is bankrupt without Jerome's connections. Diane is gone. The house will have to be sold. The children." He broke down completely, sobs racking his body. I watched my son cry, this man who had once been the center of my world. I had changed his diapers, soothed his fevers, cheered at his graduations. I had loved him with a fierceness that defined my existence. And somehow we had come to this moment, this terrible reckoning. Silence fell between us, filled only by the crackle of the fire and the distant sound of Christmas music from another cabin. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering everything in a blanket of pristine white, a clean slate that nature provided with each winter storm. "What do you want me to say, Marcus?" I asked finally. "Do you want me to tell you it's okay?" "That I forgive you, and we forget everything." He shook his head. "No, I don't expect that. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I really am sorry. And I accept your terms. I will sell the house. I will close the business. I will pay you every cent, even if it takes the rest of my life. And if you still want to sue me, I'll understand." I looked at the fire, thinking about everything I had lost. 7 years of life with my grandchildren. 7 years of birthdays and school events and hugs. 7 years I would never get back. But I also thought about what I had gained. My voice, my dignity, my truth. I'm not going to sue you. But this is what's going to happen. You will sell the house. You will pay me what you can. The rest you will pay in monthly installments for as long as it takes. And every month when you make that payment, you will remember what you did to me. You will remember the price of betrayal. I will, I promise. And one more thing, the most important thing. I want to be in my grandchildren's lives, truly be in their lives. Not as an occasional guest, but as their grandmother. I want to go to their school events. I want to celebrate their birthdays. I want to be a real part of their lives. Yes, of course, whatever you want. It's not what I want, Marcus. It's what I deserve. It's what I always deserved. He stood up to leave. He stopped at the door. Will you ever be able to forgive me? I don't know. Maybe. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean things will go back to how they were, because how they were was a lie. Now we have to build something new. Something based on truth. I understand. Good night, Mom. Good night, son. After he left, I sat by the fire again, and for the first time in years, I cried. Not out of sadness, not out of rage. I cried out of relief, out of liberation, out of having survived. The woman who had entered that resort 3 days ago was someone who had accepted invisibility as her fate, who had believed on some level that she deserved to be forgotten. That woman was gone now. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had faced betrayal and emerged with her dignity intact, someone who would never again allow herself to be erased. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering all tracks, preparing the world for a new beginning. Inside, I wiped away my tears and began to plan for mine. The following days at the mountain resort passed in a blur. The children returned to Marcus's cabin, subdued and confused. Diane hadn't come back that night. Robert and Catherine Miller moved into Marcus's cabin to help with Andre and Taylor, their faces etched with a mixture of disappointment and concern. Jerome Wells checked out of the resort the morning after the confrontation, leaving Diane to face the aftermath alone. I kept my distance, giving them space to process the earthquake I had unleashed. Each morning I would walk through the snow-covered grounds of the resort, breathing in the crisp mountain air, feeling a strange lightness, despite the heaviness of what had happened. For the first time in years, I was visible. Not just to my family, but to myself. On the third morning after the confrontation, Julian Davis joined me for breakfast in the resort's restaurant. The Christmas decorations seemed almost garish, now the cheerful music a discordant soundtrack to the family drama unfolding in our cabins. "You've created quite the situation, Eleanor. How are you holding up?" I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the cream create swirling patterns. Better than I expected. There's a certain liberation in finally speaking your truth. Julian nodded, his experienced eyes studying my face for signs of regret or doubt. He'd seen many family confrontations in his career, but I suspected few had been as calculated or comprehensive as mine. Most people in your position would have opted for a straightforward lawsuit. Bringing everyone here, orchestrating the revelation the way you did it, was unorthodox. I needed them to feel what I felt: the shock, the betrayal, the public humiliation. A lawsuit would have been clinical, impersonal. This way they experience the emotional impact of their actions. They can never unknow what they did to me. Julian raised his eyebrows, slightly impressed by my clarity. "You're a remarkable woman, Eleanor Davenport. Most people your age would have accepted the role they were given, the quiet, compliant grandmother, grateful for whatever scraps of attention the family tossed her way." I placed my cup down with a soft clink against the saucer. "That's precisely why it happens, Mr. Davis. Because we're expected to be grateful for scraps, to fade gracefully into the background, to take up less space with each passing year until we become completely invisible. Well, I refuse to disappear." Sarah Chen joined us halfway through breakfast, elegant in a charcoal gray pantsuit despite the casual mountain setting. She carried a sleek leather portfolio containing the settlement papers. "Marcus signed everything last night. No pushback, no negotiation. He's agreed to all terms." My heart twisted unexpectedly. Part of me had hoped he would fight, would try to justify his actions again, would give me another reason to maintain my righteous anger. His immediate capitulation felt almost disappointing. "Did he say anything else?" Sarah hesitated, her professional demeanor softening slightly. "He asked if you would be willing to talk to the children. They have questions. Questions he doesn't know how to answer." Of course they had questions. Their world had imploded. Their mother had disappeared with another man. Their father had been exposed as a thief. Their comfortable life was crumbling. And I, the grandmother they barely knew, had been the catalyst for it all. "I'll speak with them this afternoon. They deserve honesty, even if it's difficult." Julian and Sarah exchanged glances. "Are you sure that's wise, children that age?" "It's a lot for them to process." I straightened my shoulders. "They're already processing it. Better they have accurate information than misunderstandings and half-truths. Besides, I've been a teacher for 30 years. I know how to explain difficult concepts to children." The meeting with Andre and Taylor took place in the resort's library, a cozy room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a crackling fireplace. The children sat side by side on a leather sofa, their small faces solemn. At 12, Andre tried to project bravery, sitting up straight, his jaw set in a way that painfully resembled his father. 8-year-old Taylor clutched a plush reindeer toy, her eyes wide and uncertain. I chose a chair across from them, close enough for intimacy but giving them their space. "Let's start with your questions. What do you want to know?" Andre spoke first, his voice striving for a maturity beyond his years. "Why did you say Dad stole your money?" I took a deep breath. Because he did. 7 years ago, a distant relative left me a large amount of money in his will. Your father was supposed to tell me about it and give it to me. Instead, he kept it for himself and used it to buy your house and other things. Taylor's lip quivered. "But stealing is bad. Dad says stealing is wrong." "Yes, it is. And what your father did was wrong. Even adults make serious mistakes sometimes." Andre's brow furrowed. "Is that why Mom left because Dad stole?" "Not exactly. Your mother left because she was having a Special friendship with Mr. Wells that she shouldn't have had because she was married to your father. When everyone found out, she got upset and left. Taylor looked confused. Is she coming back? I wished I could offer more comfort, but false hope would only compound the pain later. I don't know, sweetheart. That's something your mother and father will have to figure out. Andre's next question hit me like a physical blow. Did Mom and Dad keep you away from us because of the money? My throat tightened. The perceptiveness of children never ceased to amaze me. Yes, they were afraid I would find out about the money if we spent too much time together. So they made excuses for why I couldn't come to your house or your parties or school events. Why didn't you just come anyway? Taylor's question was asked with the simple logic of a child who didn't yet understand the complexities of adult relationships. I smiled sadly. I tried sometimes, but adults need to be invited into each other's lives. When someone keeps saying not now, or we're too busy, eventually you start to believe that they don't want you there. Andre's eyes flashed with sudden anger. They were mean to you. They shouldn't have done that. His indignation on my behalf brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you for saying that, Andre. It means a lot to me. Taylor scooted forward on the sofa. Are we going to be poor now? Jessica at school said when her parents got divorced. They had to move to a small apartment and she couldn't take ballet anymore. You won't be poor. Things will change. You might move to a different house and some luxuries might go away for a while. But you'll always have what you need. And you'll have more of something very important, the truth. No more secrets in your family. Andre seemed to be processing this. Will we still see you after we go home more than ever? I'm going to be a real grandmother to you now. I'll come to your baseball games, Andre, and your ballet recitals, Taylor. I'll be there for birthdays and school plays and ordinary Tuesday afternoons, if you want me to be. Taylor slid off the sofa and came to stand in front of me. Can I hug you? I don't really know you very well yet. Her honesty squeezed my heart. Of course you can. Hugs are a good way to start getting to know someone. She wrapped her small arms around my neck, and after a moment Andre joined her. I held my grandchildren properly for the first time in years, breathing in the scent of their shampoo, feeling the warmth of their small bodies storing away the memory like a precious jewel. When they pulled away, Taylor looked at me seriously. Are you still mad at Dad? A complicated question with a complicated answer. I'm hurt by what he did. And yes, part of me is still angry, but he's still my son and I still love him. Just like he's still your father and he still loves you. People can do wrong things and still love each other. Andre nodded, seeming satisfied with this answer. Dad's really sad. He was crying in his room last night. I heard him. The image of Marcus weeping alone pierced through my armor of righteousness. Despite everything, he was still the boy I had raised alone, the child I had comforted through nightmares and disappointments. That you still care about his feelings shows what a good son you are, Andre. Compassion is important even when people have hurt us. Our conversation continued for nearly an hour. The children asked more questions, some practical, some heartbreaking in their innocence. I answered as honestly as I could while being mindful of their age. By the time Robert came to collect them for lunch, a tentative bridge had been built between us. As they left, Taylor turned back. Will you read me a story sometime? Mom always says she's too busy. I blinked back tears. Anytime you want, sweetheart. I know hundreds of stories. After they left, I remained in the library, staring into the fire, thinking about the conversations I'd missed, the bedtime stories I hadn't read, the milestones I'd only seen in photographs posted online. 7 years of memories that should have been mine, stolen as surely as the inheritance had been. The remainder of our time at the resort passed with an uneasy truce. Diane returned briefly to collect her belongings, refusing to speak to anyone except the children. She left again without any indication of her plans. Marcus moved through the resort like a ghost, hollow-eyed and withdrawn. Only with Andre and Taylor did he make an effort to present a semblance of normalcy, taking them skiing and to the resort's Christmas Eve celebration. I spent time with the children each day, building the foundation of a relationship that should have existed all along. They were cautious at first, then increasingly comfortable sharing stories about school friends, hobbies, filling in the gaps of their lives that I had missed. On Christmas morning, we gathered in Marcus's cabin to exchange gifts. The celebratory atmosphere of a typical Christmas was absent, replaced by a subdued acknowledgement of tradition. Robert and Catherine gave the children lavish presents, perhaps compensating for the family fracture with material generosity. Marcus had managed to purchase modest gifts from the resort's boutique. I gave Andre and Taylor the presents I had wrapped weeks ago, thoughtful items based on their interests that I had researched online since I couldn't learn their preferences directly. For Marcus, I had nothing. The empty space where his gift should have been spoke volumes. He nodded in understanding, accepting this small punishment among the larger ones to come. We returned home on December 27th, the holiday irreparably tainted. Marcus drove in silence, the children subdued in the back seat, the SUV that had once symbolized their prosperity, now a reminder of all that would soon be lost. When we reached my house, Marcus helped me with my luggage. The children hugged me goodbye with promises to visit soon. As Marcus turned to leave, I placed my hand on his arm. "Come back tonight after the children are asleep. We need to discuss practical next steps." He nodded, his face haggard. "Around 9. That would be fine. And Marcus, bring all financial records. Everything. Bank statements, investment accounts, property assessments. We need complete transparency from now on." The expression that crossed his face was complex shame, mingled with a flicker of resentment quickly suppressed. "I'll bring everything." I spent the afternoon unpacking and reflecting on all that had transpired. The confrontation had gone largely as planned, yet the aftermath felt different than I had imagined. The satisfaction I had anticipated was tempered by a profound sadness. Not regret, I didn't regret exposing the truth, but sorrow for the irreparable damage to our family, especially for Andre and Taylor, innocent casualties in an adult war. At 9 precisely, Marcus knocked on my door. He carried a laptop and a large accordion file stuffed with documents. His appearance shocked me. In just the few hours since I had seen him, he seemed to have aged years. Unshaven hair uncombed, wearing a wrinkled sweater that had once been a gift from me. I ushered him into the living room, the same room where Julian Davis had first revealed the theft to me. "How are the children?" Marcus set down the files on the coffee table. "As well as can be expected. They're confused, scared. Taylor keeps asking when Diane is coming home. I don't know what to tell her. The truth," I said simply. "That you don't know. That sometimes adults make choices that hurt the people they love. That whatever happens between you and Diane, you both still love them." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Diane texted. She's staying with her friend Melissa for now. Wants to arrange to see the kids this weekend. She hasn't mentioned divorce yet, but it's inevitable." I finished his thought. "You can't come back from what happened between you." "No, we can't." He gestured to the files. "Everything's here. Bank accounts, investment portfolio, property details, business finances." It's not good, Mom. The business has been operating at a loss for the last year. Jerome was propping it up with his connections and investments. Without him, it will fail. Another casualty of the deception. I opened the accordion file and began sorting through the papers, my teacher's organizational skills kicking in automatically. Let's assess where things stand. For the next 3 hours, we went through the documents methodically. The financial picture that emerged was grim. The house had significant equity, roughly $300,000 given current market values, but carried a large mortgage. Diane's business was essentially worthless without Jerome's backing and connections. The luxury SUV was leased. Credit card debt had accumulated to alarming levels. Private school tuition for 2 children consumed a substantial portion of Marcus's corporate salary. Of the original $425,000 inheritance, barely $50,000 remained in accessible assets. The rest had been spent or tied up in the house and business. Marcus would have to sell everything, downsize dramatically, and still would need years to repay me in full. I closed the last folder and sat back processing the information. 7 years of financial mismanagement and extravagance had left my son effectively bankrupt. The money that could have provided security for my retirement had evaporated into luxury vacations, designer furniture, and status symbols. "What will you do now?" The question emerged from genuine curiosity rather than accusation. Marcus stared at his hands. "Sell the house as quickly as possible. It's too big for just me and the kids anyway. Find an apartment we can afford on my salary. Pull the children out of private school after this semester. Cancel everything unnecessary. Start over." The defeat in his voice stirred complicated emotions. This was my son, the boy I had raised to be responsible, honest, hardworking. Somewhere along the way, he had lost himself in pursuit of an image, a lifestyle approval from a woman who had betrayed him as thoroughly as he had betrayed me. I reached for my purse and withdrew a small notebook. "I made some calculations while you were going through the files. Based on the equity in the house and the remaining liquid assets, you should be able to pay me approximately $350,000 once everything is sold. That leaves roughly $75,000 plus interest that you'll need to repay over time." He nodded, accepting the figures without question. "I'll set up monthly payments as soon as everything is settled. I can probably manage $2,000 a month without compromising the children's needs." The practicality of our discussion felt surreal. We were calmly dismantling the life he had built, cataloging the price of his betrayal in dollars and cents, as if quantifying the emotional cost was even possible. I closed my notebook. "There's something else we need to discuss. My role in the children's lives going forward." Marcus looked up, his expression softening for the first time since he had arrived. "They can't stop talking about you, especially Taylor. She asked if you could come for dinner tomorrow night, to read her that story you promised. A small victory, yet it felt monumental after years of exclusion. I'd like that, but I need more than occasional visits, Marcus. I want a formal arrangement, regular scheduled time with the children, involvement in their education and activities, holidays shared fairly." He didn't hesitate. "Whatever you want. You don't need to formalize it. I give you my word. Your word has proven unreliable in the past." I kept my tone factual rather than accusatory. "I want it in writing. Not because I don't believe you're sincere right now, but because I need security. I won't risk being pushed aside again when circumstances change." A flash of pain crossed his face, but he nodded. "You're right. I'll have something drafted. Sarah Chen can review it." When he left that night carrying the empty accordion file, his shoulders were stooped as if bearing a physical weight. I watched from the window as he started his car, sat motionless for several minutes, then finally drove away into the darkness. I slept deeply that night, the kind of profound sleep that comes after a long-held tension has finally been released. The path forward would be difficult, certainly, but the fog of deception had lifted. For the first time in years, I could see clearly. The next morning, I received a text from Julian Davis Wells is meeting with Diane today. Restaurant downtown, 1 p.m. Thought you might want to know. I hesitated only briefly before responding. Send me the details. 30 minutes later, I was driving downtown, questioning my own motives. What did I hope to accomplish by observing their meeting? The confrontation was over. The truth exposed. Diane's relationship with Jerome was no longer my concern. Yet something drew me there, perhaps curiosity, perhaps a desire for closure, perhaps some lingering need to witness the full consequences of the deception that had shaped the past 7 years of my life. The restaurant Julian had indicated was upscale, but not ostentatious, with large windows facing the street. I parked across the road, maintaining a clear view of the entrance. At precisely 1:00 p.m., Diane arrived, looking polished but strained. Her designer handbag, purchased with my money, hung from her shoulder as she spoke briefly with the host and was led to a table by the window. Jerome Wells arrived 15 minutes late. Even from a distance, I could read the reluctance in his body language as he approached the table. He did not kiss Diane in greeting, did not take her outstretched hand. Their conversation appeared tense from the start, Diane gesturing emphatically while Jerome maintained a rigid posture. I couldn't hear their words, but I didn't need to. The story unfolded clearly through their expressions and body language. Diane pleading, Jerome refusing, Diane growing increasingly desperate, Jerome checking his watch repeatedly. After barely 20 minutes, Jerome stood abruptly. Diane grabbed his sleeve. He shook her off with a dismissive gesture, dropped some bills on the table, and walked out, leaving Diane alone. She sat motionless for several minutes, staring at nothing. Then slowly she gathered her belongings and left the restaurant. In the brief moment when she stepped onto the sidewalk, I caught a clear view of her face, devastated, lost a woman whose carefully constructed world had collapsed entirely. I felt no satisfaction in her pain, no vindication, only a hollow recognition that the ripples from my actions continued to spread outward, touching lives in ways I couldn't have anticipated. Jerome had used Diane as surely as she and Marcus had used me. The cycle of exploitation continuing its destructive path. I started my car and drove home, reflecting on the fragility of relationships built on false foundations. Marcus and Diane's marriage, Diane's affair with Jerome, my own relationship with my family, all constructed on layers of deception that could not withstand the weight of truth. That evening I visited Marcus's house for dinner with the children as planned. The home that had once seemed like a showcase purchased with my stolen money now felt like a museum of a life about to be dismantled. For sale signs would soon appear on the manicured lawn. Moving boxes would replace the designer furniture. The space that had explicitly excluded me would soon exist only in memory. Andre and Taylor greeted me with surprising enthusiasm. Taylor immediately took my hand to show me her room, pointing out favorite toys and books, with the unrestrained excitement of a child who has found a new audience. Andre, more reserved but equally welcoming, proudly displayed his baseball trophies and comic book collection. Marcus had prepared a simple pasta dinner, nothing elaborate but made with obvious effort. We ate at the dining room table, the children filling the potential awkwardness with chatter about school friends and upcoming activities. I noticed how Marcus encouraged them to share their lives with me, prompting them with questions about events I might not know about, creating space for me in the family narrative. After dinner, as promised, I read stories to Taylor while Andre worked on homework with Marcus. Sitting on the edge of her bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and ballet trophies, I rediscovered the simple joy of sharing stories with a child, the wide-eyed wonder, the thoughtful questions, the complete absorption in imaginary worlds. When I finished the third story, Taylor looked up at me with solemn eyes. "Are you going to be at my ballet recital next month? It's Swan Lake. I'm not a swan yet, just a baby duckling, but next year Miss Amelia says I might be a swan if I practice hard." The casual invitation offered without prompting from Marcus filled me with unexpected emotion. I wouldn't miss it for the world. She smiled, revealing a missing front tooth I hadn't noticed before. "Good. Dad always comes, but Mom sometimes has to work. And now she's staying at Aunt Melissa's, so maybe she'll be too far away." I smoothed her hair gently. "Your mom will be there. Some things are changing in your family, but your parents' love for you isn't one of them." She nodded, accepting this reassurance with the resilience children often show in the face of adult complications. "Will you come for my brother's baseball game, too?" He pretends he doesn't care if people watch, but he always looks to see if Dad is in the stands. "Of course. I want to cheer for both of you." As I drove home that night, I realized that something fundamental had shifted. The confrontation at the resort had been necessary. The deception had to be exposed, the financial theft addressed. But the true victory wasn't in the settlement agreement or the promised repayment. It was in Taylor's casual invitation to her ballet recital, in Andre showing me his comic books, in being welcomed back into the ordinary moments of their lives. The following weeks brought rapid changes. Marcus listed the house for sale and found a modest 3-bedroom apartment in a good school district. He met with the private school administrators to explain that the children would be transferring to public school after the semester. Diane filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. The paperwork for the business dissolution was filed. The luxury SUV was returned to the leasing company, replaced by a practical used sedan. Through it all, I maintained a careful balance, present and involved with the children, cordial but reserved with Marcus, distant but civil with Diane on the rare occasions our paths crossed during child handoffs. Sarah Chen finalized the formal agreement regarding my time with the grandchildren. The document stipulated regular visits, inclusion in all significant events, shared holidays, and even summer vacation time. It wasn't legally necessary. Marcus had demonstrated his commitment to reintegrating me into their lives, but it provided the security I needed after years of exclusion. 1 month after our return from the mountain resort, Marcus sold the house. The real estate market had cooperated, yielding slightly more equity than anticipated. The business liquidation had produced less than expected, but between the two, Marcus was able to transfer $369,000 to my account, the largest portion of the restitution. I stared at the bank statement, showing the deposit emotions swirling. The money that should have been mine 7 years ago had finally returned, diminished by time and spending, but substantial nonetheless. At 69, I suddenly had financial security. I had never expected freedom to travel, to renovate my small house, to help fund my grandchildren's future college expenses. Yet the victory felt bittersweet. The money had come at tremendous cost. A shattered family, traumatized children, years of relationship that could never be recovered. Would I have made the same choice if I had known the full consequences? The question haunted me in quiet moments. 6 weeks after the confrontation, Julian Davis visited me one last time. We sat in my garden, unusually warm for February, the first crocuses pushing through the soil with stubborn determination. "You've got your money back. You've got your grandchildren back." Was it worth it? I considered the question carefully. The money, yes and no. It's rightfully mine, and the security it provides is significant at my age. But if I could trade the money for the 7 years I lost with Andre and Taylor, I would do it in a heartbeat. Julian nodded thoughtfully. And Marcus, can you forgive him? The crocus buds caught my attention, their purple tips emerging from the winter-hardened earth. Forgiveness isn't a destination. It's a process. Some days I look at him and see my little boy, the child I raised alone, and my heart softens. Other days I remember the calculated way he excluded me year after year while living off my money, and the anger returns. And Diane, I've never hated Diane. She disappointed me deeply, betrayed my trust. But in some ways, she was caught in the same web of deception Marcus created. Her affair with Jerome was wrong, certainly, but I can't help seeing a kind of poetic justice in how that relationship ended. Julian studied me with his perceptive gaze. You've changed, Eleanor. There's a strength in you that wasn't there when we first met. I smiled slightly. Invisibility erodes your sense of self. Being seen again, really seen, restores it. After Julian left, I walked through my small house, mentally cataloging changes I might make with my newfound financial security. A bathroom renovation, new kitchen appliances, perhaps a sunroom extension where I could read and watch the garden through all seasons. My phone chimed with a text from Marcus Andre's science fair project won first place. He asked if you could come to dinner to celebrate. 6 p.m. if you're free. 7 simple words at the end of that message filled me with quiet triumph. He asked if you could come. Not an obligation, not a duty, a genuine desire for my presence. I texted back immediately, I'll be there. Tell him congratulations. As I set down my phone, a profound realization settled over me. The money had been stolen from me. The time with my grandchildren had been stolen from me. My sense of belonging in my own family had been stolen from me. But the most valuable thing that had been taken, my voice I had reclaimed entirely through my own courage. The ability to speak my truth, to demand respect, to refuse invisibility that had been inside me all along, waiting for the moment I would remember my own worth. The journey ahead would not be simple. Rebuilding trust with Marcus would take years. Creating authentic relationships with Andre and Taylor would require patience and consistency. Navigating the new family dynamic with Diane would demand grace I wasn't always sure I possessed. But for the first time in nearly a decade, I was walking the path as a full participant rather than a shadow at the edges. No longer invisible, no longer silent, no longer accepting scraps of attention as if they were feasts. I was Eleanor Davenport, mother, grandmother, teacher, survivor. And I would never allow myself to disappear again. Spring arrived with a gentle persistence, coaxing new life from dormant soil. In my small backyard, I planted a garden for the first time in years, tomatoes, cucumbers, herbs, and flowers that would bloom in sequence from April through October. The physical labor felt redemptive, my hands working the earth as I reconstructed my life one day at a time. The money from the house sale had transformed my financial reality. I hired contractors to renovate my bathroom, replace the aging roof, and install the sunroom I'd dreamed of for years. The practical improvements were satisfying, but more meaningful was the simple freedom to make choices without constant calculation of cost against fixed income. My relationship with the children evolved with each passing week. Andre's initial reserve gradually yielded to a cautious trust. Taylor's enthusiasm never wavered, her affection offered freely in the unguarded way of 8-year-olds. They spent every Wednesday afternoon with me after school, a standing arrangement Marcus had established as part of our new family structure. On a warm April afternoon, I stood at the kitchen counter preparing snacks for their weekly visit. The doorbell rang precisely at 3:30. Marcus was punctual with drop-offs, one of many small efforts he made to demonstrate reliability. I opened the door to find both children on the porch, but instead of Marcus behind them, Diane stood awkwardly on the bottom step. My surprise must have shown clearly on my face. Taylor filled the silence. Mom wanted to bring us today. Dad had a work thing. Diane's appearance had changed subtly since I'd last seen her. The designer clothes and perfect makeup had been replaced by simpler attire and a more natural look. Her BMW was gone too, replaced by a modest Honda parked at the curb. I thought Andre would like to show you his science fair project. It's in the car, the one that won first place. The olive branch was unexpected, but unmistakable. I hesitated only briefly before nodding. Bring it in. I'd love to see it. Andre retrieved the display board from the car while Diane remained on the bottom step, clearly uncertain about whether the invitation extended to her. When Andre returned, I gestured toward the house. Would you like some iced tea, Diane? The children and I were about to have a snack. Relief flickered across her face. If it's not an imposition. That afternoon marked a tenuous new beginning. While the children enjoyed cookies and explained their school projects, Diane and I maintained a careful civility. We discussed only neutral topics: school activities, Taylor's upcoming dance recital, Andre's baseball schedule. Neither of us mentioned Marcus, the divorce proceedings, or the events at the mountain resort. As she prepared to leave 2 hours later, Diane lingered by her car after the children were settled inside. I want you to know I've started therapy. There's a lot I need to work through. About the choices I made, the person I became. I studied her face, searching for insincerity, but finding only vulnerable honesty. It's a good start. She nodded, accepting the measured response. Jerome reached out last week, wants to reconnect now that his wife has filed for divorce. I told him no. The information wasn't necessary, but I understood why she shared it. A small proof of changed perspective. Another step on a different path. Good decision. Diane's eyes met mine directly for the first time. I was wrong. About everything. The way we treated you. What we did with the money. My relationship with Jerome. All of it. Her admission hung in the spring air between us. Not quite an apology, but an acknowledgement nonetheless. I've learned something important these past few months, Diane. It's never too late to choose differently. To become someone else. She absorbed this with a thoughtful nod before getting into her car. 3 simple words floated through the open window as she started the engine. Thank you, Eleanor. I watched the car disappear down the street, contemplating this unexpected turn. Reconciliation with Diane had never been part of my plan. The focus had always been on Marcus and the children, with Diane relegated to the periphery of my reclaimed life. Yet here was a tentative connection forming not friendship, certainly not yet forgiveness, but perhaps the beginning of mutual respect. The divorce proceedings finalized in May, remarkably smooth given the circumstances. Diane waived any claim to the remaining assets, asking only for joint custody of the children and modest child support. Marcus continued to live in the 3-bedroom apartment, working his corporate job and adjusting to life as a single father sharing custody. He paid me $2,000 each month toward the remaining debt, never missing a payment, despite the obvious financial strain of his new circumstances. Each time the notification appeared in my bank account, I felt a complex mixture of vindication and sadness, the monetary acknowledgement of a betrayal that could never be fully repaid. Our interactions remained cordial, but distant, weighted by unresolved emotions on both sides. The barrier between us was most noticeable during child exchanges. Marcus would bring Andre and Taylor to my house for their Wednesday visits, but rarely came inside, offering a brief greeting before retreating to his car with promises to return at 6. On the first Wednesday in June, however, he deviated from the pattern. The children had rushed inside to see the newly installed sunroom, leaving us momentarily alone on the porch. Mom, can we talk sometime? Just the 2 of us. There are things I need to say. I considered his request, noting the dark circles under his eyes, the new threads of gray at his temples. Despite regular contact through the children, we hadn't had a substantive conversation since the financial settlement 2 months earlier. Saturday morning, the children have swim lessons with Diane. He nodded, relief evident in his expression. Thank you. I'll bring coffee. The good kind from that shop you like. That small detail, remembering my preference for the locally roasted dark blend from the cafe downtown, triggered an unwelcome wave of tenderness. The reminder that beneath the man who had betrayed me so profoundly was still the son who once knew me better than anyone. Saturday arrived with a perfect June sky, the kind of cloudless blue that seems to extend forever. Marcus arrived precisely at 9, balancing a cardboard tray with 2 coffee cups and a paper bag that presumably held pastries. The effort at normality was both touching and painful. We settled in the new sunroom, morning light streaming through the windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air between us. Marcus took a deep breath, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup as if seeking warmth despite the mild temperature. I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I did what I did. To you. To our family. I sipped my coffee, waiting. In the garden beyond the glass, a hummingbird hovered near the feeder I'd installed here, and gone in the blink of an eye, just as the years with my grandchildren had vanished while I wasn't looking. The therapist says I need to make amends, not just repaying the money, but really addressing the harm I caused. I thought I was ready at the resort, but I wasn't. I was still in shock, still defensive underneath it all. Now I'm seeing things more clearly. The hummingbird returned its wings, beating so rapidly they disappeared into a blur. Something so small containing such extraordinary energy, such purpose. What do you see more clearly now? Marcus set down his cup, meeting my gaze directly. That it was never about protecting you from financial decisions or thinking you couldn't handle the money. That was the lie I told myself. The truth is uglier. I was greedy. I felt entitled. After years of watching you sacrifice for me, some twisted part of me felt like I deserved that inheritance more than you did. His blunt self-assessment hung between us, remarkable in its honesty, but still insufficient to bridge the chasm his actions had created. And Diane? His expression shifted, pain flashing across his features. She encouraged it, certainly, helped justify it. But the initial decision was mine. I can't blame her for that even now. I leaned forward slightly. Why? Why maintain the deception for 7 years? Why systematically exclude me from your lives? The question I had been asking myself since Julian Davis first appeared on my doorstep with his manila envelope. The mystery at the heart of the betrayal. Marcus exhaled slowly. At first it was fear of getting caught. Pure self-preservation. But over time it became something worse. Every time I saw you, I felt guilty. Every time the kids mentioned you, I felt ashamed. Rather than face those feelings, I avoided the trigger. You, the children picked up on my discomfort, followed my lead. Diane reinforced it. The pattern became self-perpetuating. The simplicity of his explanation was devastating in its banality. No grand conspiracy, no elaborate justification. Just the slow erosion of moral courage, one small avoidance at a time. Do you know what hurts the most? Not the money. Not even the lies. It's the time, Marcus. 7 years of birthdays, school plays, Christmas mornings, ordinary Tuesday afternoons when the children might have been sitting in my kitchen having cookies after school. Time that can never be recovered, never replaced. Tears filled his eyes. I know. If there was any way I could give that back to you, I would. It's the one debt I can never repay. The rawness of his admission pierced through layers of resentment I hadn't realized were still so thick. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first real step toward it. We sat in silence for several minutes, each absorbed in private reflections. Eventually, Marcus spoke again. I've been offered a job in Chicago. Better pay, more responsibility. Under normal circumstances, I'd take it without hesitation. The implication was clear. These were not normal circumstances. His obligation to repay me, his commitment to rebuilding our relationship, his responsibility to the children who had already endured so much disruption. All reasons to stay. You should take it. Your career shouldn't stagnate because of past mistakes. He looked genuinely surprised. But the debt? Our arrangement? The children seeing you regularly? I waved away his concerns. The debt will follow you to Chicago. We can adjust the payment schedule if necessary. As for the children, there are airplanes, video calls, school holidays. We'll figure it out. My voice softened slightly. Your life needs to move forward, Marcus, for the children's sake as well as your own. Relief and gratitude washed over his features. Thank you. I wasn't sure you'd see it that way. The conversation shifted to practical matters, timing of the move, logistics of maintaining the children's relationship with me, adjustments to our legal agreement. By the time Marcus left 2 hours later, a new framework had begun to take shape, one that acknowledged the realities of distance while preserving the essential reconnection with my grandchildren. After he drove away, I wandered through my garden, considering the implications of this latest development. Chicago was a 7-hour drive, a quick flight. Not insurmountable, but certainly a complication in the carefully constructed visitation schedule we had established. Yet denying Marcus this opportunity would only foster resentment, creating new tensions that would inevitably affect the children. Sometimes healing requires space, room to breathe, to become someone new in surroundings unburdened by constant reminders of past failures. Perhaps that was true for all of us. The following Wednesday, I explained the upcoming changes to Andre and Taylor during their regular visit. Chicago seemed like an adventure to them, a famous city with skyscrapers, museums, a huge lake, deep dish pizza. Their resilience continued to amaze me, their capacity to absorb change and find excitement in new circumstances. But you'll still be our grandma, right? Taylor's question revealed the underlying anxiety beneath her enthusiasm. "We'll still see you." I pulled her close, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood. "Of course. I'll visit you in Chicago. You'll come stay with me during school breaks. We'll have video calls every week. Nothing important is changing." Andre, ever practical at 12, had more specific concerns. "Will Mom stay here? Or is she moving too?" A question I couldn't answer with certainty. "Your mother and father will work that out together. But no matter what happens, both your parents love you very much. And so do I." Taylor's small fingers traced patterns on my arm as she processed this information. Like a constellation of stars that can still be a constellation even when they're far apart. The unexpected poetry of her analogy caught me off guard. Exactly like that sweetheart. No matter how far apart we are, we're still connected. Still family. The remainder of June passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Marcus accepted the Chicago position with a start date in early August. He found an apartment in a family-friendly neighborhood with good schools. Diane, after much deliberation, decided to remain in our city, which meant establishing a long-distance co-parenting arrangement. The children would primarily live with Marcus during the school year, with extended visits to Diane during breaks and holidays. This decision surprised me. I had expected Diane to fight for primary custody, but she explained her reasoning during one of our increasingly frequent conversations. "They need stability right now. Marcus can provide that better than I can at the moment. I'm still figuring things out." The modest apartment she had rented after the divorce, her new job as an administrative assistant at a local design firm, evidence of her commitment to rebuilding her life on a more authentic foundation. July brought Taylor's 9th birthday, celebrated with a small party at a local park. Marcus, Diane, and I achieved a delicate harmony for the occasion, setting aside complicated adult emotions to create a joyful experience for her. Watching my granddaughter blow out candles on a butterfly-shaped cake surrounded by her parents' brother and friends, I felt a bittersweet contentment. This was how it should have been all along, all of us present, all of us visible, all of us acknowledged. The first week of August arrived too quickly. Moving day dawned hot and humid, the air heavy with impending rain that matched the emotional atmosphere. The children were subdued as they helped load the last boxes into the moving truck. Andre maintained a stoic facade that occasionally cracked, revealing the vulnerable boy beneath. Taylor made no effort to hide her tears, clinging to Diane until the final moment. I stood slightly apart, allowing the nuclear family their private goodbye. My own farewells had been said the previous evening during a special dinner at my house, a lighter occasion, where we focused on the adventures ahead rather than the separation at hand. When the truck finally pulled away, Diane remained on the curb long after it disappeared from view. I approached cautiously, unsure if my presence would be welcome in such a raw moment. She spoke without turning. "They're really gone." The finality in her voice reflected more than just the physical departure. It acknowledged the end of a chapter, the family they had been, the life they had shared, the future they had planned. "Yes, but they'll be back for visits, and you'll go there." She nodded, still staring down the empty street. I turned down the Chicago transfer my company offered. "Did Marcus tell you?" "No, he hadn't mentioned it." "You could have gone too." A sad smile crossed her face. "It wouldn't have worked. Too much has happened. We need separate paths now." The wisdom of her decision surprised me. 6 months ago, I would have described Diane as materialistic, superficial, self-centered. Now I glimpsed depths I hadn't previously recognized, or perhaps had chosen not to see. People can change, if they want to badly enough. She turned to face me finally. "I'd like to keep bringing the children to visit you when they're here with me, if that's all right. A peace offering, a recognition of my place in their lives, an acknowledgement of past wrongs without dwelling on them. I'd like that very much." As summer faded into fall, new patterns emerged. Weekly video calls with the children became a cherished ritual. Marcus and I spoke briefly during these calls, exchanging necessary information, but still maintaining a careful distance. Diane and I developed an unexpected rapport, occasionally meeting for coffee to discuss the children's visits, and gradually expanding into more personal conversations. In late September, I flew to Chicago for my first visit. The children's excitement was palpable as they showed me their new school, new apartment, new neighborhood. Marcus had created a comfortable home with spaces dedicated to each child's interests, and a guest room prepared especially for my stay. The 4 days passed in a blur of museums, parks, and deep dish pizza sampling. On my final evening after the children were asleep, Marcus and I sat on the small balcony overlooking the city lights. I've been thinking about what you said, about the time that can never be recovered. The night air carried the faint scent of approaching autumn, a crispness that hinted at change. His profile in the dim light reminded me painfully of his father, the same strong jawline, the same contemplative expression when wrestling with difficult thoughts. You were right. Those years are gone forever. But I've realized something important. We can't recover time, but we can redeem it. By being fully present now. By creating new memories that matter just as much. His insight resonated unexpectedly. For months I had been dwelling on what had been stolen, the irreplaceable moments, the milestones missed, the relationship that should have been. The fixation on loss had become its own form of prison, keeping me anchored to pain even as new connections formed. That's surprisingly profound. When did you get so wise? A faint smile crossed his face. Therapy twice a week will do that to you. Plus, I've had a lot of time to think about what really matters. What kind of father I want to be. What kind of son I haven't been. I reached over impulsively and squeezed his hand, the first voluntary physical contact I had initiated since the confrontation at the mountain resort. The simple gesture seemed to mean more to him than any words could have expressed. When I returned home, the house felt different, not empty but waiting. As if the space itself understood that it would soon be filled again with children's voices, with new memories, with redeemed time. October brought Andre and Taylor for their first visit without either parent a long weekend during their fall break. The excitement of being trusted to travel as unaccompanied minors had dominated our video calls for weeks. I prepared their favorite foods, planned special outings, and transformed the guest room into a space that reflected their individual interests. Those 4 days revealed dimensions of my grandchildren I hadn't fully appreciated before. Without their parents present, they relaxed into more authentic versions of themselves. Andre's serious exterior softened, revealing a dry wit and keen observational skills. Taylor's bubbly enthusiasm occasionally gave way to thoughtful questions that hinted at a deeper, more contemplative nature. On their final evening, we made homemade pizza together, flour dusting every surface, as Taylor attempted increasingly elaborate dough tossing. The laughter in my kitchen, that everyday sound I had missed for so many years, felt like the most precious gift imaginable. Later, as we curled up to watch a movie, Taylor nestled against my side. I wish we could have done this before. When we were little. The innocent observation tightened my throat. I wish that too, sweetheart. Andre, sprawled on the floor with a bowl of popcorn, looked up thoughtfully. Dad says you guys are redeeming time now, making up for what got lost before. Taylor nodded solemnly. Like when you mess up a drawing, but instead of throwing it away, you turn it into something different. Something maybe even better. Out of the mouths of babes. Their instinctive grasp of what Marcus and I had discussed on the Chicago balcony left me momentarily speechless. Yes, exactly like that. We can't erase the mistakes, but we can create something new and beautiful from them. Andre considered this, then offered a perspective that stunned me with its maturity. Maybe the bad stuff had to happen so we could get to the good stuff. Like if Dad hadn't taken the money and you hadn't found out, we might never have really known you. You'd still be just someone we saw at Christmas who sent birthday cards. The painful truth of his assessment hung in the air. The very betrayal that had caused so much hurt had ultimately forced a reckoning that transformed our family. Without the confrontation, the pattern might have continued indefinitely, me growing increasingly invisible, the children knowing only a shadow of their grandmother Marcus and Diane, maintaining their deception indefinitely. Sometimes the greatest gifts arrive in the most painful packages. The thought settled into my consciousness, reshaping my understanding of everything that had transpired since that Christmas Eve 11 months ago, when I had discovered the family photo captioned "Family Complete." November brought Thanksgiving, the first since the revelation of Marcus's betrayal. The holiday arrangements were complex, with Marcus and the children flying in to spend the actual day with Diane, then the following weekend with me. 3 separate celebrations, 3 distinct family configurations, all connected by 2 children navigating their new normal with remarkable grace. My Thanksgiving dinner was small but meaningful. Julian Davis and his wife joined me along with Sarah Chen and 2 friends from my teaching days. The conversation flowed easily, touching on books, politics, travel plans, ordinary topics that had nothing to do with inheritance theft or family reconciliation. As I served pumpkin pie with fresh whipped cream, Julian raised his glass in an impromptu toast. To Eleanor, who taught me that it's never too late to demand the respect you deserve. Sarah Chen added her own sentiment, and who showed remarkable restraint when lesser souls would have sought vengeance rather than justice. The warmth of their recognition washed over me, a reminder that the past year had not only transformed my family relationships, but had also brought new friendships into my life connections based on mutual respect and genuine appreciation. December arrived with a gentle snowfall that blanketed the city in pristine white. The children's excitement during our weekly video calls escalated as Christmas approached, their wish lists growing increasingly elaborate with each conversation. Marcus called separately one evening, his voice tentative. "Mom, I've been thinking about Christmas. Last year at the resort. It wasn't what any of us expected. I was wondering if this year we could try something different. Something simpler. More authentic." The memory of last Christmas, the orchestrated confrontation, the exposed lies, the family implosion seemed distant now, as if it had happened to different people in another lifetime. "What did you have in mind? What if the kids and I come there to your house? No fancy resort, no elaborate gifts. Just us. A real family Christmas." The offer contained layers of meaning beyond the practical suggestion, an acknowledgement of last year's disaster, a step toward genuine reconciliation, a recognition of my home as the family center it should have been all along. I'd like that very much. We finalized the details over the following days. The children would spend Christmas Eve and morning with Diane, then travel to my house for the remainder of the holiday week. Marcus would join us on Christmas Day, bringing their luggage and gifts. Simple, straightforward, focused on togetherness, rather than material excess. As the day approached, I prepared my house with care, decorating a modest tree, hanging stockings for each of us, planning meals that included everyone's favorites. The physical tasks kept my hands busy while my mind processed the remarkable journey of the past year. From invisible to essential, from excluded to central, from powerless to restored. The transformation extended beyond my family role to my fundamental sense of self, a reclamation of dignity that had seemed impossible when Julian Davis first appeared on my doorstep with his manila envelope. Christmas Day dawned clear in cold sunlight glinting off fresh snow that had fallen overnight. I moved through morning rituals with a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in years, checking and rechecking preparations that were already complete. When the doorbell rang shortly after noon, I opened it to find Marcus and the children on the porch, their faces flushed from the cold arms laden with packages. Taylor launched herself at me with characteristic enthusiasm. "Merry Christmas, Grandma. We brought presents, and Dad made his special hot chocolate with the little marshmallows." Andre followed with a more restrained but equally genuine hug. "Mom already gave us our big gifts, but we saved some to open with you." Marcus entered last stomping snow from his boots, his expression a mixture of uncertainty and hope. "Merry Christmas, Mom. Thank you for having us." The simple greeting contained multitudes, gratitude, apology, longing for connection. I took the thermos he offered our fingers, brushing briefly in the exchange. "Merry Christmas, son. I'm glad you're here." We settled in the living room, the tree lights casting a warm glow as the children distributed gifts with exaggerated ceremony. The presents were thoughtful, rather than extravagant books selected with my interests in mind. A hand-knitted scarf in my favorite shade of blue artwork the children had created themselves. My gifts to them reflected similar care experiences we could share together, rather than objects that would eventually be forgotten. Tickets to a spring baseball game for Andre, ballet lessons at a prestigious summer program for Taylor, a weekend trip to the botanical gardens that Marcus had loved as a boy. As wrapping paper accumulated and exclamations of delight filled the room, I observed my son and grandchildren with quiet wonder. This moment, ordinary, imperfect, genuine, was worth more than any inheritance. The restoration of family bonds, the rebuilding of trust, the creation of memories that would sustain us through whatever challenges lay ahead. We weren't the same people who had gathered at the mountain resort a year ago. Marcus was humbler, more authentic, working daily to redeem his past choices. The children were more perceptive, more appreciative of family connections that transcended material comfort. And I was stronger, more assertive, unwilling to accept invisibility ever again. Later, as we sat around the dinner table enjoying the feast we had prepared together, Taylor looked up with a sudden question. "Grandma, remember when you said people can still be a family, even when they're far apart, like stars in a constellation?" I nodded, touched that she had remembered the conversation from months earlier. Yes, exactly like that. She glanced around the table, her expression earnest. I think we're like that now. Even when we're in different places, we're still connected. Still family. Not because we have to be, but because we want to be. Out of all possible gifts, this understanding from my granddaughter was the most precious. The recognition that our family had been transformed, not through obligation, but through choice. Through the daily decision to remain connected despite distance and past hurts. Through the conscious effort to redeem what had been lost. Marcus raised his glass, his eyes meeting mine with unguarded emotion. To family. Not perfect, but real. Andre and Taylor lifted their sparkling cider in solemn imitation. To family, I joined the toast, my heart full beyond measure. To family, lost and found, broken and mended, invisible no more.